From the front lines of the war on terror to the front lines on the war on poverty, Jake Harriman is fighting the good fight. He's a decorated military veteran who served 7.5 years as a platoon commander in both the U.S. Marine Corps Infantry and a special operations unit called Force Recon. Awarded the Bronze Star for actions in combat during his second tour in Iraq, Jake Harriman came to believe that the contributing causes of terrorism, disenfranchisement, lack of education, and extreme poverty must be erased in order for peace to prevail. Take a look.
Terrorists rely on an endless supply of desperate people living in extreme poverty with no other options in life. The only chance we have to see the end of terrorism is to end extreme poverty. NURU is a new type of humanitarian organization that partners with rural communities in the developing world and other organizations to end extreme poverty together, one community at a time.
Well, after leaving the Marine Corps, Jake graduated from the prestigious Stanford Graduate School of Business, where he created NURU International, a nonprofit focused on ending extreme poverty in remote areas of the world. Working in Kenya and Ethiopia since 2009, NURU International has helped over 85,000 people lift themselves out of extreme poverty. It's great. And the organization's impact has gotten some attention. In 2014, Jake was named a White House Champion of Change, and in 2015, recognized by Goldman Sachs as one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. He was also recently named a Presidential Leadership Scholar, and he joins us now to share his goal of eradicating global poverty in our lifetime. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Boy, you're a slacker, aren't you? Man, I mean, talk about this list of achievements. That's pretty incredible. And it's also because it came out of something so difficult for you when you were in Iraq serving.
That's right.
And so tell me about that epiphany that you had while you were there.
Well, it was early in the invasion, and at the time in southern Iraq, it was one of the poorest places in the world. There was no access to any kind of health care education for the kids, terrible hunger problem. And what had been happening as we moved through the south was that the regular Iraqi army was retreating to make a final stand in Baghdad. Yeah. And Saddam was pushing his Fedayeen soldiers south, and they were going hut to hut in these villages, recruiting these poor farmers to fight us, basically saying, look, your children are starving to death right in front of you. Yeah. If you pick up this weapon and go fight these guys 10 miles south of here, we will drop off a bag of rice here for your kids every other week. Huh. We were fighting these guys by the hundreds and thousands. And that kind of set the stage for this one kind of momentous event in my life. We had just survived the first major contact of the war in a place called Nasiriyah. We'd been ambushed, and we pushed through the city and had dug in north of the city. And everybody was terrified. We were all scared. We were hungry. We hadn't eaten in 2 days.
Oh, man.
Everybody was tired. So I got up out of my fighting hole, and I was walking the lines, kind of checking on my guys to make sure everybody was okay. And I remember there was like a very thick fog that morning, and I knew as the sun came up, they were going to start shooting at us again. And I looked up on the highway, and I saw a little white car racing toward our position. And they had just started putting suicide bombers in these cars to blow themselves up. So I grabbed 3 of my guys. We took off running to stop the car. And I fired a warning shot across the front of the car. Finally, it stopped about 50 meters out. And the driver hops out, starts waving his arms frantically and running at me. So now I think this guy's, he's strapped a bomb to himself. He's going to blow himself up.
Right.
So I'm yelling at him in Arabic to get on the ground. He's not listening. Finally, as I lift my weapon, I think I have to take this guy out. I look behind him, and I see a large black military truck roll up behind his little white car. 6 guys in black jump out of the truck, run up to his car, and start shooting into the car. And so this man stopped dead in his tracks, starts screaming, turns around, starts sprinting back to his car. And that's when I realized that, you know, this guy was just one of those poor farmers who was trying to escape across our lines with his family because he didn't want to fight. So I yelled at my guys to take out the Fedayeen. And I ran as fast as I could to try to desperately save this guy's family. And by the time I got there, it was too late. You know, I looked.
They were all lost.
I looked at the passenger's side. His wife had been shot in the face and in the chest. She was dead, and he had a little baby infant girl in the back whose arm had been shot off, and she'd been shot in the head. And then he was cradling the body of his little 6-year-old daughter who'd been shot in the stomach, and she was choking on her own blood. And I just thought, you know, in that moment, everything in the war kind of slowed down, and I put myself in this man's shoes for the first time, and I thought, you know, like, I have all these choices in my life. You know, what kind of choices did this guy have when he woke up this morning? You know, he could watch his kids starve to death. He could pick up a weapon he doesn't even know how to use, make some desperate attempt to cross our lines. He didn't have any choices. And that was the beginning of this big awakening for me. You know, I thought, we can't just kill our way out of this problem. You know, the problem of terrorism and extremism is such a complex issue. We have to start thinking about alternative methods to complement what we're currently doing. We have to start giving people real, meaningful choices to stymie the spread of a lot of these groups.
Sorry, I just got a little bit choked up from that story because it just takes it to that level that people don't understand. The loss and the sacrifice and the desperation that they, feel. That they feel like there's no other hope, right? That's part of the problem of what's fueling the terrorist recruitment.
Right. I mean, we all want to take care of our kids. We all want to give our kids a better future, and, poverty doesn't cause terrorism, but it acts as a huge contributor that allows extremism and terrorism to thrive and grow and spread around the world. And so if we can tackle extreme poverty, we can eliminate one of the factors that allows it to continue.
Right. So, therefore, you saw that happen. Then you said, okay, we need to tackle it from this angle. Rather than, as you just said, we can't kill our way out of this.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
So tell me then how that concept came into fruition. I mean, that's a pretty big task to take on, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was very daunting. So I remember I had many conversations with my unit, the guys in my unit. We talked a lot about this problem. We all saw that what we called a market gap, essentially. You had guys like us, operators who were DOD had in there trying to work in these villages helping, but honestly, we were trained to take out targets. We weren't trained to help farmers.
Right.
And then you had aid workers who were very well intentioned, but they go in and they were really short-term solutions, more handout type stuff, not a lot of sustainability, and many of them were getting kidnapped and killed. So we saw this gap that perhaps we could have former operators like us who know how to handle ourselves, build a sustainable long-term economic development model for these villages. And that was the beginning of the genesis of the idea. And I talked to my guys about it, and we all got excited about it. And I decided to make one of the toughest decisions for me at the time, which was leaving my guys in my unit, getting out of the Marine Corps to kind of on this quest to build this new way of development.
Right.
And I got out and I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. Like you said, it's a daunting challenge, right? Extreme poverty.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, we've been faced with extreme poverty for eons now, and so how do you think about it?
This is extreme poverty combined with war and conflict, right?
That's
I mean, those
focusing in really unstable areas, and so I didn't know what to do. I had an engineering degree from the Naval Academy, which I had never used, and I wasn't a Peace Corps guy. I wasn't a development economist. So I spent about a year and a half just researching the problem, trying to understand, okay, what's working, what's not working in the industry, and why. And my initial idea was I want to join another organization and help from the inside out. But I quickly found out nobody wanted to hire me. Apparently I wasn't hireable.
Oh, no.
So I thought, that's fine. I'm pretty entrepreneurial. My father was entrepreneurial, so I thought I'll just start my own thing.
Good for you.
And that led me on a quest. I didn't want to just start a little project that was going to help a couple people. I wanted to build a company that could actually help impact this on a global scale. And that actually is what led me to business school. I knew I had to learn the language of business. I had to understand how to build a company effectively, run on business principles, not like a traditional charity, but really run efficiently where we can leverage investors' dollars to create the furthest impact possible.
Well, here's the thing, Jake, though. It must have been difficult, though, to try to explain to the average person who hasn't seen the conflict, who hasn't gone through what you've gone through as a soldier on the ground, to see exactly what the problem is, right? So to convince investors and just even supporters, was that tough to try to explain to them what this was about?
What I found in the beginning, I assumed that would be the case, and it hurt me in the beginning because I was going to Stanford. There were very few people at Stanford at the time, veterans who had actually been in combat, and so I was really nervous about opening up about my experience. But what I found is when I did open up and I shared my passion and the vision for what I was trying to do, people really rally around that. I found that investors and just the general public, people rally around strong vision and passion for change in the world. If the entrepreneur, if the founder is driven and on point and they have this fire in them that can't be extinguished, people are really drawn to that.
Right.
And I found that is, and it's not just me, there's many people out there like me, that entrepreneurs who have a unique vision to add something in the world that's never been done before.
Sure.
And so at places like Stanford, they really like the concept of innovative new ideas that can kind of like breakthrough technology. And I think the team and I that were working on it were really onto something really unique, and people saw that, and they wanted to get involved. And so we had over 30 of my classmates got involved.
Oh, wow.
6 faculty at Stanford came on board as mentors, advisors, investors. So.
Okay. Well, we have a video that shows how Nuru works.
Sure.
So let's take a look at that, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Great.
All right. Okay.
This is how Nuru works. When Nuru is invited into a community, they meet with local stakeholders to identify and focus on the most promising leaders, who are then mentored and equipped with essential skills. These local leaders identify their most pressing needs in the areas of hunger, the inability to withstand financial shocks, preventable disease and death, and a lack of quality education for children. Data is collected and a baseline is established for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. Local leaders are provided with extensive analysis of the world's top poverty-fighting interventions to evaluate against set criteria. They choose what will work best in their context and then mobilise their community into action. Successful local business people are recruited to start businesses to fund the poverty-fighting work. Nuru provides them with world-class training and access to new markets and capital. As their businesses grow, their increasing profits enable the work to spread to neighbouring regions. After 7 years, Nuru International's staff and funding exits, leaving behind a self-sustaining organisation owned and operated by local leaders who are equipped to innovate past challenges and rapidly scale throughout the country.
Jake, what I love about your business model is that you work with local leaders, first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, you actually have them choose what model works best for their community, right?
That's
So
right.
it's sort of customized to what their needs are, and you take into consideration really what their community needs, right?
That's right. It's really important because what we found, I mean, we're based on the philosophy that a strong Ethiopian woman leader who is in this country is far better equipped to solve her long-term problems than I will ever be.
Right.
The key is actually just unlocking the potential in her and removing barriers from around her that are keeping her from realizing that potential. So our model focuses on leadership. And we have a process of co-creation where we design these programs with the local leaders. It's based on best practices and lessons learned from around the world that we all analyze together, but then they make the final selection on what the composite solution is going to look like.
Yep.
Because they're best informed on what's going to work in that culture, in that context. What that does is it creates huge ownership and buy-in and leadership sustainability.
Right.
So that when we leave, these leaders can continue not only to implement and scale, but also innovate past challenges that they're going to meet along the way as these programs change and break, et cetera.
So give me an example of how it works and what's been done in a particular community so I get a visual sense of the success and what's actually implemented.
Sure. So I'll walk you through what it looks like for a family that works with Nuru. Okay, so you take Kenya or Ethiopia. We work with farmers who are in really desperate situations. So typically, their kids suffer from a hunger season. Sometimes the kids get one meal a day for a period of 3 months. Really terrible situations. There's lack of access to any kind of quality health care. They're dying from stupid diseases like malaria, diarrhea, respiratory tract infections. In the schools, the children many times can't go to school because the parents can't pay the school fees. If they do go, it's very difficult for them to get good literacy training so they can actually learn to read. So the literacy levels are abysmal. So they're in these situations that are very desperate. The first thing Nuru does is we come in, we focus on, okay, the first thing we have to do is provide food security.
Yeah.
Right? So we work with the local leaders to design an agriculture program that could look like this. Providing a loan for high-quality fertilizer and seed, teaching them how to use it effectively, supervising them in the field to make sure that they're able to use it properly, and also give them advice as they hit challenges. Just by doing that, we can at least double their production. So now all of a sudden farmers on the same piece of land have enough food to be able to feed their families, and they have actually some left over to sell.
Right, so there's some income.
Exactly.
Right.
We provide a market linkage because many times there's no access to markets in these remote regions.
Right.
So the farmers get a fair price for their food as they sell it. Now they have income for the first time. So what do you do with the income? Now that's the second program, financial inclusion. We train them on the importance of savings. We provide savings mechanisms, access to microloans, so that they can actually, when shocks come to the family, economic shocks, they can dip into that savings account and pay for that. So they don't have to go to their food stores, sell all the food, and now they're back down in hunger again.
Right. So it's like financial planning.
Exactly, yeah.
In the most basic way, yeah.
That's exactly right, just like we would have here.
Sure.
And then next is our healthcare program. The reason we focus on healthcare is because the most common economic shock for a family in rural communities is if a child gets sick or if a mother dies during childbirth,
Right.
you have to pay for funeral expenses or medical expenses. So if you can eliminate the really basic infectious diseases that are plaguing these villages, you can have a huge win and eliminate those economic shocks. Again, furthering the prosperity of the family.
Yep.
And then the final silo we work on is education. This is really about breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty for these families. You know, we want, especially the young girls, to be able to make it all the way up to high school, to secondary school. And we found that the key lever in that research shows if kids can make it to a second grade reading level, the whole world opens up to them because they can do what's called read to learn. They can understand what they're learning in their other subjects, which allows them to test higher and begin to make it to higher grades into high school.
Yeah, and girls being key,
I mean,
right?
girls are key. I mean, empowering women and girls, all of the research shows if you can empower women and girls to be able to get good, solid education and empower them with choices, economic choices, it's one of the key levers in eliminating extreme poverty in this region.
Well, Jake, let me ask you this. I mean, with this program, you must have seen amazing transformations in communities and families, right?
Absolutely.
Do you see that transformation taking place so that anger or that bitterness or that desperation starts dissipating, and
Absolutely.
you know, you kind of see that there's a hope, you know, that this could actually make a difference worldwide?
Absolutely. You know, I see in these communities that we're working with, I see the desperation going away. You know, I see for the first time, you know, individuals, families having hope for their future. These are brave, resourceful people who have tried for years to try to get their families out of these conditions, but they've been, the deck has been stacked against them just because of the GPS coordinates of where they've been born. You know, so with basic access to basic choices and basic resources, they're able to pull themselves out of these conditions, out of extreme poverty, and they're proud of it too. For the first time they have hope, they begin to think about things other than just survival, which is really important. You begin to think about good governance from your government, you know, and you begin to think about linking up with neighbors to make positive change in your community yourself. A lot of really positive things.
And going back to the issue of terrorism and the war on terrorism, do you think this is the way to try and, you know, defeat that?
Absolutely. I think it's a big part of the equation. So, you know, I think military solutions, there are evil people in this world. There's evil groups in this world. We need our military to be able to take care of that problem. However, as some of our senior military leaders have stated, we cannot kill our way out of this problem. It requires a more holistic solution. And there's a lot of very good conversations happening, not only in the U.S. government, but in the United Nations and the African Union about how we need to build a more robust strategy around eliminating extreme poverty, around adding stability in some of the most fragile regions as a way to strip away a lot of the resources and recruiting grounds and logistic spaces of support for some of these extremist groups.
Yeah. And we should mention that this is not about a handout. No. This is about empowering them, teaching people, and then leaving eventually. Right. And then they become independent, and as the video said, that they spread their information to other regions, right?
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, this is not a Westerner solution. You know, and like I said in the very beginning, this philosophy is based on the fact that the individuals that we're working with are brave, resourceful people who are far more capable than we are of solving their problems. We're just a catalyst. You know, so exit is very important. We think it's really important that Nuru International, the Western organization, must leave in order for true long-lasting success to happen.
Right, right. Well, Jake, it's great stuff that you guys are doing with Nuru. Congratulations. And I know you have expansion plans. Yeah. What other areas are you about to go to?
So we have, the last 7 years have been really about proving the model works. And so we did that in relatively stable places, Kenya and Ethiopia. Now that the model is working, we're really getting ready to tackle what I believe was my original vision, which is taking this into some of the toughest places in the world. We want to show the world that we can disrupt violent extremism, disrupt terrorism through the Nuru model and the Nuru approach. So we're specifically looking at different regions that are very volatile. So we're looking at northeast Nigeria, we're looking at southern Somalia, looking at eastern DRC. So those are some of the top regions that we're looking at for our next project, because what we want to be able to demonstrate in a big splash way, that if you do this work in a sustainable way, it makes for a very fertile ground for a more holistic strategy to counter violent extremism, that it's an important component to the equation. And then once we can prove this with data, then our goal is to scale that up kind of globally.
Yeah, I think you're onto something for sure. But congratulations on all the success thus far. But I think you got a healthy road ahead of you with this project. So good luck to you.
Thanks so much. All right. Appreciate it.
When we come back, a simple recalibration of charitable giving is having an impact on global poverty that may surprise you. Stay right there.